Ah, 40k tournaments. A place where those who enjoy Warhammer can get together, have a weekend of fun with plastic toy soldiers, and not think about the crushing state of the world. Hey everyone, it's Announcer of Games again, and after a brutal death march to get some videos done, I got to participate in another Warhammer tournament. I wasn't able to make it to LVO because LVO had the entire library staff light its ass on fire. Instead, I played in a local tournament again, and it was genuinely such a fun time to get away and just enjoy some time rolling dice and getting to enjoy a game I love. Hell, I even painted up the majority of my army. Aside from several models still only having a metallic coat, most of my army was done. I even did up an obliterator, and if you play Chaos and Paint, you know how much of a bitch these guys can be to paint. I did that in 4 hours. If you haven't watched my first video, I highly recommend you watch it, as it explains how 40k tournaments work in a bit of greater detail than I'm going to go into here. But a quick reminder of how 40k tournaments work. 40k tournaments work on a win-loss system, so if you win 2 games, you will face someone who also won 2 games. But if you lost 2 games, you will face someone who also lost 2 games, etc. As well, this tournament was still using the Pariah Nexus missions and board setups, as the Necrons missions weren't out at the time. So, let's talk about the army I brought, shall we? Cause oh boy did I theory craft hard with this one.
I did drugs this scene!
Last time I took my Thousand Suns rubric brick list led by Magnus the Red. Though for this tournament, I didn't want to bring a Primarch, and with the new Eldar Codex out, I felt my Thousand Suns just wouldn't be up to snuff when it came to Wars of Attrition. Plus, I felt like I needed to give some love to my other chaotic boys. And thanks to a certain Red Gobbo, we got some new and returning detachments for some armies. So of course, I had to use the new Chaos Space Marine detachment. What do I look like? A man with integrity? The Chaos Space Marine army ability is Dark Pacts. Before a unit in your army performs a shooting or melee attack, you can roll a leadership test for your unit. If you pass the leadership test, you then get to pick what your unit's attacks do on hit rolls of 6. Either generate additional attacks, or automatically wound the targets regardless of toughness. Though if they fail the test, the unit takes D3 mortal wounds, but still gets to pick the bonus. The detachment I went with was the Creations of Bile detachment. An attachment where, thanks to 40k's personification of intrusive shower thoughts in the lab, Fabius' detachment has buffs that are applied to all of my infantry units in my army. And you either pick one, or roll randomly for 2 buffs. These buffs range from additional movement, giving extra attacks to your melee weapons, or gaining an extra point of toughness, which, whoo boy! Toughness 8 obliterators are always hilarious to throw at someone. I, however, built my army to benefit from any and all of these buffs, because I took only infantry. That's right, no landlings, no forge fiends, not even a hint of a demon prince with or without rings, because fuck it we ball was my entire strategy, and Fabulous Bill always bets on the guy who doesn't question the fuck juice he puts into the needle. Now, some are probably going to ask, why didn't I take Fabius, as he allows me to re-roll my random choices? Well, because he has to be your warlord for that, and another guy I brought just wouldn't allow that. So, let's talk about units. My army was led by the big boy himself, Abaddon the Despoiler, because the idea of Fabius sticking him with a needle is genuinely hilarious to me. Abaddon is a pretty expensive guy to bring at 280 points, but for those 280 points, you get a terrifying melee beast with devastating wounds on all of his melee weapons, meaning that on wound rolls of 6, damage can't be stopped at all, as well as a variety of additional effects to choose from. As well, if you do a Dark Pact and the roll is a 7 or higher, you get an additional command point, which with this army, we need that. After that, we have a Sorcerer. The Sorcerer isn't much to write home about, but his strength as a support unit is that he can do extra damage with his Gift of Chaos ability, and he also gives a -1 to enemy units attempting to hit him and the unit he's with. For an additional 25 points, I gave him the Helm of All Seeing enhancement, which makes enemy units arriving from reserve have to be set up outside of 12 inches from him, meaning that this guy can pretty much just secure my back line on his own. Then we have my Master of Possession. He too has a pretty neat ability called Sacrificial Dagger. It does a mortal wound to a friendly model in his unit, but it gives him an additional attack and +1 to wound for his psychic attacks, which is all the attacks he has, aside from a bolt pistol. Along with that, he can take the Prime Test Subject enhancement, adding 1 to his damage for melee attacks and allowing him rerolls. He's a pretty scary beatstick, and with a +1 to advance and charge rolls, oh yeah, this is a mighty fine flesh beatstick. Then we have 2 Legionary units, one built entirely for melee, the other built only with bolters. Basically, the melee unit is a glass cannon. They either kill something and hold an objective, or they die brutal and painful deaths, while the bolter squad is just there to babysit objectives and my sorcerer. Then we have Abaddon's bodyguard unit, the Chaos Terminator Brick. A 10-man unit of Terminators that I gave 6 Power Fists, 2 Chain Fists, and 2 Accursed Weapons. But all 10 of them have combi weapons, because I'm a high roller, and I fish for 6s for devastating wounds, damn it. As well, while Abaddon is handing out a 4+ invulnerable save, these guys give him and themselves rerolls when they make a Dark Pact, so it adds an extra layer of precaution just in case. Then we have a 10-man unit of Chosen, all armed with Accursed Weapons, 4 armed with combi weapons, and the champion is armed with twin Accursed Weapons. People say Chosen are pretty redundant, but they are basically just cheaper 3-wound Terminators at the end of the day, and being able to shoot and charge after advancing or falling back? Oh yeah, they are perfect for babysitting the Master of Possession. Then we have 2 squads of Havocs, one with las cannons and one with autocannons, a squad of 10 Raptors for backline or midline jobs with 2 melta-guns in their unit, and finally, 2 Obliterators, which I dubbed Billy and Bobby, because fuck you, it's funny to me. This was a pretty scary infantry force. Not only did I have pretty good melee units, but I also had the ranged firepower to back it up. And thanks to stratagems like Monstrous Visage, giving enemy units a -1 to hit on a unit I choose, auto-stimulants, allowing for a unit to charge even after advancing, and fight on death, yeah, my guys were pretty much ready for everything. So, let's see how I did, shall we? Well, this was a bad first matchup. You see, Eldar just got their codex before the tournament, so they were the new kids on the block, and although I did get to study the codex, I didn't get a chance to think of any good counters to it. Plus, all the new stuff was still new to me. Even worse, it was my own brother playing against me, which, although hilarious, meant that we both were playing with a bit of an unknown wildcard of a book, as he too didn't have time to take it out for a spin yet. The Eldar army was the new Wraith detachment, meaning that units like Wraith Guard, Wraith Blades, Wraith Lords, and Wraith Knights are given a +1 to hit and wound when within 12 inches of an Eldar Psyker, and access to their army ability that they don't get normally. The Eldar army ability Battle Focus basically gives a set number of units within the army tons of movement options, which... great! The army consisted of Eldar Ulthran, the Eldar's best psychic unit, a Spirit Seer, a Warlock Conclave, 2 Farseers, a squad of Storm Guardians, 2 Wave Serpents, 2 units of Wraith Guard with Wraith Cannons, a squad of Wraith Blades, 2 Wraith Lords, and a Wraith Knight. This list was beefy, built to hurt, and had the movement to overtake the board on turn 1. But luckily for me, he got turn 1. Well, it's an uphill battle from here, I guess. For my detachment abilities, I rolled a 6 and a 1, giving my infantry +1 to hit for shooting, and +1 to the amount of melee attacks they get. So there was that at least. Round 1 was Take and Hold, a simple mission. Just park units beside the objectives, and you score 5 points per objective you hold to a max of 15 per turn. And since the Eldar picked tons of characters and large units, I chose Assassination and Bring It Down for my secondary objectives, whereas my brother chose Defend Stronghold and Engage on all fronts, and his first turn was brutal and simple. He pushed up the board with all of his units, keeping the blob of Wraith units on my right side, while he had the Storm Guardians take center, a Wraith Lord and Knight on the left, and his Wave Serpents backing them up. Then his shooting came, and my poor Havocs took a beating with only 2 men alive by the end of the brutal onslaught, with the last cannon team being nuked off the face of the earth. Luckily, everything else was hidden by line of sight blocking terrain, but now my anti-tank was relegated to just melee. My turn was a hard-pressed assault, launching my Chosen and Terminators up the board. Shooting wasn't really going to be an option for me at this point because, well, I did, however, bring my Obliterators in from Deep Strike to help soften up targets like the Wraith Knight, while my Chosen, Abaddon's Terminators, and my Melee Marine Squad all assaulted the front line. Abaddon's unit and the Melee Marine Squad were able to kill a Wraith Guard unit and a Wave Serpent, but my Chosen failed to put the Wave Serpent down on the other side. Still, not a bad response from me. Turn 2 for the Eldar was brutal for both me and for them. Brutal for them because when the Wraith Knight moved, my Obliterators opened up with an Overwatch and proceeded to murder it with a sustained barrage of death. As well, with the front line being a massive pile of Wraiths and Terminators, there wasn't much he could do and shoot at. So he settled for charging his Guardians into melee with my Obliterators to shut them up, while also charging his Wraith Lord on the left into my Chosen, and charging the Wraith Lord and Wraith Blades into Abaddon's Terminator unit, which resulted in tons of my Terminators and several Chosen dying, but the response was deafening, with Abaddon slaughtering the Wraith Blades and the Chosen finishing off the Wave Serpent. Turn 2 for me was make or break. I pulled my Chosen out of combat with the Wraith Lord, because I can charge and shoot even after pulling out of combat, and sent them to help clear out the Storm Guardians holding down my Obliterators, while I also brought in my Chaos Raptor unit from Deep Strike into the backline because, look, his backline is empty, and that back objective is just there for the taking. Except he had a Farseer hiding back there, meaning I had to deploy 9 inches away. Damn it! Even worse, they got overwatched by the Warlock Conclave and got burned for quite a bit of damage. Though things were still on a knife's edge, my Chosen unit was able to get into melee combat and clear out the Storm Guardians and their Farseer, and my Obliterators were free to do their job again, while Abaddon and his last few Terminators took out the last Wraith Lord. But there was still the bitter problem of Eldrad and his psychic buddies. But in turn 3, the game just turned against the Eldar. My brother did manage to kill Abaddon with a combination of Eldrad's Doom ability and his Mind War attack, but his last Wraith unit was just too hurt to do anything, and my surviving Raptors closed the distance to his home objective and killed the Farseer defending it. I was also scoring tons of points, and he had no steam to keep it going, and I tabled him by this point. Which, holy hell, wasn't expecting that. Granted, I got stupid lucky throughout the match as some of my models just kept making their saves no matter what my brother tried. I won the game 85-21. Now, this was a win, don't get me wrong, but it felt kinda hollow, because my brother didn't have a deep understanding of his book, and he hardly used the battle focus ability. Next time, he will have a deeper understanding, and it probably won't go as close to the knife as this match was. But I was moving on to round 2. What's next for me? Oh boy! A rematch with the army that made me earn every inch in the last tournament I played in. And this army was looking to be the same kind of fucking problem. 3 Cryptechs, 2 units of Wraiths, 3 Locust Heavy Destroyers, a squad of Warriors, 2 Doomstalkers, a squad of Scarabs, and 2 Catan Shards, the Nightbringer and Void Dragon. Ooh boy, am I getting flashbacks!
Flashback.
The Nightbringer took personal offense to that and proceeded to hand Magnus his shit.
End of flashback.
The detachment he chose was the Canoptic Court, which generates a field of control that expands with the amount of objective he holds, and any friendly Necron unit within that area of effect gets to reroll all hit rolls. My opponent also decided to do random objectives, while I again chose Assassination and Bring It Down. I mean, come on. He has 5 characters on the board and 4 other big things. Why wouldn't I choose that? I also rolled for my Fabius buffs and got a 2 into 5, giving my guys an extra 2 inches of movement, while also giving their melee weapons an extra point of strength. Not bad, in all honesty. This time the mission was Purge the Foe, and the deployment was Sweeping Engagement. Scoring points wasn't just about holding objectives, but killing more than your opponent killed. So not only do you have to kill units, you have to kill more than your opponent does. So with that decided, we roll for the first turn, and again, I didn't get the first turn. This is going to be a problem, isn't it? Even better, he set up a unit of Wraiths and their Cryptech in the middle of the board, and another unit on the far right, as he had an Infiltrate ability, giving him 2 objectives in no man's land before the game even started. What the fuck? With the terrain layout, however, I was able to hide most of my army, meaning that his long-range units in the back could do diddly dick for turn 1. All he could do was some shooting from his Void Dragon and a shot from one of his Stalkers. But that was it. Since there was a Wraith unit so close to my army, and the Void Dragon was right there, my army proceeded to tear ass through the whole metallic old folks' home. We shot the Void Dragon to death, and Abaddon's unit and the Chosen all charged into the Wraiths, pretty much wiping them out in one round. Round 2 wasn't any better for the Necron player, though he was able to squeeze in some damage to my Chosen, and due to a sniper effect, he was able to kill my Master of Possession and a few Terminators. But he either whiffed tons of shots, or saved the ones I needed to. Then on my turn, Abaddon and his Terminators ran up the board, scoring a massive 6 on that advanced roll, and the rest of my army pushed up or held the line. Though annoyingly, my Havocs couldn't do much because the line of sight problem was an issue for them too. I assaulted his Wraith unit with my regular melee Chaos Marines, and Abaddon's unit popped the auto-stimulant strategy and spiked their charge to go murder the poor Doomstalker. They then piled into a Locust Destroyer, which, let's be honest, isn't gonna live very long. Though the poor melee unit that charged the Wraiths didn't do too hot. They killed one Wraith, only for it to pop back up on the next turn. Turn 3 was where my opponent just lost all steam against me. Most of his units were dead. He really only had the Nightbringer left, along with a couple of Wraiths and Scarabs, because on my turn, I brought in my Raptors, and they just ate his last Doomstalker. Abaddon and his unit made it to his home objective and killed the Necron Warrior unit and its Cryptek, while everywhere else, he just didn't have much to go on. Kinda brutal, to be honest, and a one-sided smackdown. He forfeited on my turn 3, leaving me with a 60-20 point difference. Man, these games are going by really fast. I was done an hour earlier than everyone else, and I felt good. Better than good. I was feeling great, like I could actually win this. Though, talking with my opponent after the game, we both realized that my Obliterators didn't really use their ability, which gives them indirect fire, an ability that I doubt will ever be useful. Either way, this led to the last game of the day. How did we do? So, this battle was fucking rough, and was the longest game of the day. I felt like I went 30 goddamn rounds with Mike Tyson. This list was designed to be my equal in every way. It was using the Librarian detachment from Grotmus, a detachment that, when I did a tier list for it, I severely underestimated it, declaring it the second worst detachment out of the bunch, only for someone at LVO to go, ha! Bet! And come in first with not only that detachment, but with Deathwatch. Deathwatch! An army that we thought was dead and never coming back. The Dark Angels get the regular Oath of Moment ability of Space Marines, which lets my opponent pick one unit from my army, and all Space Marine attacks targeting that unit get to reroll hit rolls against it. And the Librarian Conclave detachment lets my opponent pick one of 5 abilities during his command phase. They only buff the Librarian and his unit, but trust me, these abilities can and do hurt. The Dark Angels army had 3 Librarians, one regular with a squad of 10 Stern Guard and 2 Heavy Bolters, inside a Repulsor, and the other 2 in Terminator armor with Deathwing Knights. He also brought 2 Scout Squads, 2 Ballistus Dreadnoughts, Azrael, the Supreme Grandmaster of the Dark Angels, with a squad of Intercessors, 2 5-man Reaver units, and an Infiltrator squad. This list has an answer to everything, and I have answers to it in every way that matters too, but we deploy our forces, and I choose Assassination again, but also Cull the Horde, as those 3 big and beefy Terminator and Stern Guard units were just too tempting to pass up. My opponent decided to do random objectives, and our mission was Linchpin, with the mission rule, Raise Banners, and again, the first turn was just not interested in helping me. I did, however, roll a 4 and a 6 for my buffs, meaning that I get +1 to hit for shooting, but all my units also get +1 toughness. Very needed, as Dark Angel shooting is rough, and I need everything I can get. Now, the problem came down to the layout of the board, and how the tournament ruled terrain. The first floor of every building was line of sight blocking. For those who don't know, line of sight in 40k means that models have to have direct line of sight to their target to shoot or use most of their abilities on them. With this rule and the board type, me and my opponent couldn't see each other. So for both of our first turns, we just didn't know what to do. He couldn't shoot me, and I couldn't shoot him. Just kind of staring off awkwardly at each other. If he forced the issue and attacked me first, he would have the swarms of angry marines on him. But if I forced the issue and rushed out, if I didn't make my charges, well, then I'd be out in the open with no cover. The problem came down to the fact that he could play the waiting game, since he had way more objectives than I did. I took a breath and realized that if I didn't force it now, he was just going to sit there and score. So I advanced every unit I could and charged the regular Chaos Marine melee unit into a Deathwing Knight unit, only to find out that this stupid stratagem exists. Fiery Shield. At the cost of 1 command point, you target 1 infantry or mounted unit within 18 of a librarian, and that unit forces enemy units to hit them on a -1. It also makes all enemy attacks hazardous. Hazardous, for those that don't know, usually goes on weapons that have an ability to overcharge their attacks, like plasma guns. Those weapons get stronger when overcharging, at the cost of potentially hurting or killing the unit using it. However, this isn't making me stronger, it's just telling my men to go fuck themselves! My regular CSM gets 4 attacks each, and the unit is at 10 men, which means 40 attacks. Hazardous activates on rolls of 1 to hit, doing 3 mortal wounds to each poor guy who rolls a 1. I killed most of my unit and only killed 1 Terminator. And then they murdered my poor Chaos unit, which basically told me, yeah, this is gonna be dry and rough. Now, turn 2 came, and since most of my units were now out in the open, the Dark Angels just lit me the fuck up. He moved his repulsor into position and unpacked it, and the entire army could now see my Chosen, my Terminators, and my other units. And this is where I learned about the horrors of the enhancement Fusillade. Fusillade, for the low cost of 15 points, gives the Librarian's unit anti-monster and anti-vehicle, but it also gives them either sustained hits or extra range. And Sternguard Bolters get a whole bunch of buffs and devastating wounds! And if shooting the Oath of Moment target, they get to re-roll wound rolls. So, it's the least to say that they obliterated everything I know and love. My Terminators were reduced to 3 men and Abaddon, and my Chosen got roughed up, which only got worse when the Deathwing Knights charged Abaddon's unit and activated that stupid fiery shield, leading to the deaths of the rest of my Terminators. And although Abaddon was able to kill a few back, yeah, the heart of my army was just ripped out. My turn 2 was a tough spot. With Abaddon locked down and without his squad, I was really just relying on whatever I could get down on the ground. Even more frustrating was that his army was deployed in such a way that trying to bring in reserves was nearly impossible. So I was stuck throwing my Raptors near my deployment zone to grab a midfield objective. Wait, there's a perfect-sized hole for my Obliterators in his back line.
NANI?!
My response in shooting was just as brutal as his, with my Chaos Obliterators looking at Azrael's unit and just destroying that annoying bastard. Blowing apart the entire unit and killing Azrael in the process gave me a door back into the game. My Chosen shut down a Ballistus Dreadnought and tied down an Infiltrator unit, and Abaddon was finally able to put down the Deathwing Knight unit, but was unable to reach the Sternguard unit. Turn 3, my opponent wasn't giving an inch. He moved his Reavers to intercept my Raptors, and Abaddon sadly was gunned down without a second thought. Granted, that was all he was able to kill in that encounter, as the rest of my army was just tough enough to stop him. He brought in a second Deathwing Knight unit and slammed them into my Chosen, which led to a brutal slug match. He killed a few Chosen, while my Master of Possession and the Chosen killed a few Terminators back. My turn came, and though my shooting was massively hampered, as the line of sight terrain was fucking with me hard, I was able to move the remaining Havocs, who hadn't been doing fuck all, into positions to secure the center objective and blow apart what they could. And they failed to even hit anything. It was the champions who were able to hurt the repulsor. The champions! I was so frustrated with them. 250 points total for 2 units that did nothing this whole tournament. Although the Raptors were cleaning house with the Reavers, my Obliterators moved to secure his home objective, and my chosen unit was holding strong. It felt like I couldn't catch up. Turn 4, the Stern Guards wiped out my Havocs. However, it was clear something was changing. He was losing steam, and my units, although bloodied, were killing everything they touched now. His last Deathwing unit was finally wiped out. Granted, it was after killing the last Chosen, but my Master of Possession wasn't in combat anymore, and he was dragged out of it by the Knights. Meaning that he was free to do whatever I wanted him to do. And then, in my exhausted entire brain, I remembered something. We both realized that my Obliterators didn't really use their ability, which gives them indirect fire. An ability that I doubt will ever be useful. No fucking way. That ability that I said would never come up nor be used? Well, ain't life just something special? I choose sustained hits for my Obliterators, I spike the amount of shots they get, and absolutely bombarded the shit out of those Stern Guard, destroying them. Then my Master of Possession killed a Scout Squad, taking an objective, and my Raptors were able to take the last objective, letting me finally catch up points-wise. Then, turn 5. He only had a Repulsor left and a Ballistus Dreadnought. The Dreadnought was able to catch my Master of Possession and tank shocked him to death, but the Repulsor wasn't able to do anything, which then came back to my turn, and I was able to do everything and my objectives were all completed. Then, as I ended my turn, we tallied up the points, and it came to this. I won. I fucking won? By a single point? Ah! Holy shit, this was hard fought. But me and my opponent looked at the point totals, and even though it was a hard and brutal fight, we both had a fantastic time. We hugged it out, actually. It was great. Genuinely, it was a great time. And even though I was brain dead after the long day, I was just happy to have gotten to play. Granted, there is a 2v2 thing coming up, so there's that. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate the support and your viewership, and I appreciate so much that I can gush about these games to you. Remember that I have a Patreon, so if you want to see my videos early, you can subscribe there, and it helps keep the lights on. Furthermore, we have a goal for the end of March that if we reach 15k subs on YouTube, and or donate collectively $2,000 between Twitch and YouTube, I'll review Fire Warrior and stream it live for all of you. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you all next time. What's that? Oh, sounds like I need to do some planning.